Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So I heard your little echo there, Ken. This meeting is being recorded. But anyway, this is Carla Atherton, host of the Children's Health Summit and director of the Healthy Family Formula. And I am here with a series that is called Your Family Health Revolution and Conversations with Friends. And my friend today is Ken Ceder of the Science of Light. And today we are talking about just that, the science of light, healing with light, and love. And I added the love part because I'll tell you, like, some of the conversations I have with Ken are just like the most enlightening, illuminating, to beat these like metaphors into submission, or to emphasize them for actually. We have the best conversations. And I just want to share some of that with you in like mingling into this conversation about light, about illumination, about how important it is for our health and our children's health. So I'm just going to read Ken's bio in his own words, and then I'm going to invite him into the conversation. So Ken Ceder, so he says, Dr. John Ott inspired my lifelong passion for the effects of full spectrum sunlight on biological organisms, including humans. Daily light hygiene is vital for human health, a message that I've been advocating for more than 30 years, as well as now as the Director of Science of Light, SOL, a 501 nonprofit. SOL's primary mission is to raise awareness of malillumination, a term coined by Dr. Ott to describe a contemporary health syndrome akin to malnutrition. More recently, SOL has focused energy and resources toward fulfilling a mandate to design and provide a solution for the silent epidemic of mal-illumination. Soulshine photonutrition is the result of our effort and initiates a paradigm shift from seasonal light therapy to daily light hygiene. Soulshine is a balanced nutritional lamp that includes critical near-infrared light and supplies the correct spectral diet for people who do not or cannot spend sufficient time outdoors in the sun. So welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Carla. That was a mouthful.
I know, and I really I like to. I'm not doing so well with the mouth right now, but that's okay. People will forgive me for that. But and
Yeah.
Ken, you'll see that Ken is the only person in this whole event that is not one of like my trainees or one of a fellow coach in a healthy family formula health coach or empowerment coach. But the reason why I had one special guest is because this is so important to me, and it is so, like I said, it is it's one of the most important things I think for health, like entirely. And so I just had to have you on. I actually have a light here that Ken has produced, and I know the passion that has gone into this project because I've been talking to him, like we've known each other for a good, I don't know, 5 years, maybe even
Music.
6. Right? Like, and I know that mission trying to get lighting into schools, that was for the first catalyst for all of this stuff that was happening. And so we've been talking about this for years and having really glorious conversations. And I've been very well informed and educated by Ken about the importance of light. So I'm going to stop talking now. And I want to hear from Ken, and I'm sure all of you want to hear from Ken as well. So my first, like what I want to ask you right off the hop is why do we need light and what purpose does it serve in human health?
Sure. Well, in the simplest sense, way back when a guy by the name of Albert Einstein claimed that everything in the universe breaks down to a packet of light called a photon. And based on that, which has now been validated, what that's really saying is you and I, we may look like the gross form, but for all intent and purpose, technically, we break down to light. That said, not only do we absorb light, but it's also, they have now, Fritz Albert Popp, I believe, started the research of biophoton energy, and he was able to demonstrate that we not only take in light, but we emit light. So that said, the obvious is that light, I think almost every religion, philosophy, if you look through history, light has been associated with the divine of, I think, almost every tribe that you can think of. Coming back to it on a more mundane physical level, what's been identified is that light, technically, entering the retina of the eye, Carla,
Mm-hmm.
regulates our entire brain chemistry. In addition to regulating the chemistry in general, and I mean everything that you say, think, or do, you may not be aware of it, but it is regulating and affecting and impacting every action, whether they be conscious or subconscious. Excuse me. With that said, the light that enters your eye, interestingly, the eye is the smallest organ of our body. And of course, our skin is the largest organ. Ironically, if one were standing in the noonday sun naked, 98% of the sunlight energy enters your body through the retina of your little eye. And I think most of us have probably heard about vitamin D. And even if we're not health minded, we have a pretty good sense that vitamin D is pretty darn important. I mean, the research is just off the rail.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, what we're basically saying in simple language is that light, do I dare say, is the voltage. It's our voltage. We have a plumbing system where we get good nutrition and we eat, but most people have little idea that all of your organs are connected by your nervous system, and all of the equipment is not only dependent on the food that you eat, but very obviously, if you don't have the electricity going to your refrigerator or the wrong voltage, it does not refrigerate properly. So unfortunately, of all of the health essentials, I think it's pretty fair to say, although changing, that light is probably perceived as the most overlooked. It's there. We don't give it a whole lot of thought. And yet, ironically, it's critical. It's absolutely vital. I mean, every single thing is dependent on light. And maybe I'll even spin a little bit different. When I was a younger man, a kid, so to speak, worked in dear old dad's mechanical shop, body shop and mechanics. So I like to compare the human body, which is, excuse me, a combustion engine, technically, to an automobile engine. We know that a car, you have fuel. In a human, of course, we have food that we ingest. In an automobile, we have, in most cases, a carburetor that brings in oxygen for that combustion engine. Well, we know we have lungs, so the human takes in food, they take in air, or technically oxygen. Then in the automobile, we have a spark plug, and the spark plug in the car takes the fuel, excuse me again, and basically that spark causes ignition. The spark plug for human is light entering the eye. So the light is the voltage, it's the spark. Light, the way I like to say it, light is life's energy.
I love that. And so when you say the most overlooked, not only the most overlooked, but the most important, perhaps. I mean, I know there are lots of just like, things in our environment, or, things that are, I guess, foundational for human health, but perhaps this is the most important.
It's certainly, I would say, to be safe, there's
Yeah.
nothing more important. So oxygen's kind of important.
Yeah.
Water's kind of important.
Right.
But when it comes down to most overlooked, we're certainly familiar that we need oxygen, and we're cautious to have air filters. We're certainly cautious about our water. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. People concerned about what they drink. But as far as light, I'd say that the greatest majority of people don't have a clue. Not only do they not have a clue about the light in their environment, and maybe not as much appreciation for the sun as they should. When they go out to the sun, they wear sunglasses, which is understood, but it's blocking the light that's going into your brain.
Yep.
Or excuse me, or they'll wear colored lenses that are filtering the light, that are interrupting the voltage, if you would, that is essential for your nervous system to function. But a really major component up and beyond the brain chemistry that is now becoming sort of mainstream in the world of general lighting, the mainstream of lighting, not necessarily the health, is what they refer to as circadian lighting. There was a Nobel Prize won about 3 or 4 years ago. You forgive me I'm not really a detailed kind of guy, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was 1 or 2 folks won a Nobel Prize for understanding the mechanics of the circadian rhythm. And for those folks that may not realize what circadian rhythm is, within the human body, it's approximately a 24-hour cycle that is in sync, or rephrase it, should be in sync with the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun, as well as within the 24-hour cycle. But the point is, it's essential, especially the morning sun, for a human to preferably get sunshine. It's free, but in those places where sunlight may not be available, or maybe some folks are shut in and can't get it, It is absolutely critical. I don't know of anything more important than setting your circadian rhythm. And the
Hmm.
reason for that is, in addition to the master rhythm, master circadian control in the brain, how would I say it? All the different organs basically all have their own little time clocks. So everything that's going on for you, as odd as it may seem, is set by time. And if you're out of rhythm with nature, which unfortunately, I think that's the state of the world these days, at
Yep.
least here in the West. If you don't get that rhythm, you can almost just imagine. I'm sure women can relate to rhythm more than us silly boys
Mm.
sometimes. I mean, rhythm is understood pretty well as a woman. The fact is, if you don't have that rhythm, it becomes obvious. You start to wobble, if you would. And the fact is, by simply getting morning sun, see, at least 15, 20 minutes, or they
Yes.
recommend about a half an hour. The morning sun sets the rhythm. Not only does it set the rhythm for the day, but it also sets you up that the morning sun shuts off melatonin, do I dare say the sleep hormone, and
Hmm.
turns on serotonin. And although the rhythm changes throughout the day and the color of light in nature changes, the morning light in particular, that's the real cornerstone. So if you can set that cornerstone, even if you don't really have enough time to really get into the whole idea, setting that morning cornerstone not only gets you charged up, makes you awake much more than even your cup of coffee. I hate
Oh,
to say
yeah.
it, but
Yep.
true. Yeah, but true. But the beauty of it is, it also, by setting the morning rhythm, you're now setting up when you're ready for bedtime, it's setting up the flow of melatonin. It's building melatonin, which is critical. And I hate again to say how many millions of people struggle with sleep issues.
Hmm.
I'm not suggesting that a little bit of sunlight may cure all the all of ills, but it would go a long way of getting that rhythm set. The rhythm regulates everything. It regulates your sleep. It regulates your diet, I say diet, I'm trying to think the proper word, your need for food. Anything you can
Hmm.
think of has a
Hmm.
time clock, and the light is regulating. So again, I don't know of anything more important or more critical than the essential need to set your rhythm and get your whole, get that spark to start your day, to get started. So it's really essential. Circadian rhythm. It's a big word. I would encourage anybody to take a peek at that. And as I started my comment, conventional lighting world,
Hmm.
circadian, what do they call it? Circadian lighting. It's like the biggest thing going for lighting. They're not into some of the biology. Like I sort of go up into a rabbit hole with the biological effect, but it's now become a mainstream feature of lighting, that the importance of circadian rhythm. It's definitely, I think it's number one, as far as what's hot in the world of lighting these days. So again, circadian rhythm, I would encourage anybody, if they have a moment, to go to, let me get my brain in gear. It's a new website. Oh, goodness. Quantum
Hmm.
biology. Goodness, I'm trying to get the last word. You'll have to forgive me. I'll have to look to make sure. But
Look it
there's
up.
a new website. You got it?
No, but
Collective. Quantum.
collective.
Yes, quantum biology collective.com.
Okay.
They will make a much more, do I dare say, clear and sophisticated than my ramblings, other than my passion for it. But anybody that goes there on the very home page, they will learn information that they're going to scratch and say, wow, I guarantee this, I did not know that.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah, it's, again, a really good one.
and so, and rightly, like you said, that is the going thing in lighting, and I think rightly so. And you were, and so yeah, with everybody that I work with, we always work on circadian rhythm. It's a must. Like it's a must,
Absolutely.
right? Like there's no, like
Absolutely.
there's no question about it. And like just for the reason that you're talking about, like getting us back into those natural rhythms, because there's a reason for that. Like you said, like
Sure.
getting the body ready for sleep. And while we sleep, we detox and we rest and repair. And then when we get up, we want to get that chutzpah to be able to live our lives. We don't want to be waking up and like feeling like garbage because we had a short sleep at the wrong time. Like who sleeps during the day and feels good? Like we just know this. We don't even, I love the science and I love what you explained. And I think it's really good for people to understand that so that they can like, it's a reason for actually paying attention to their sleep and their rhythms. And also from
Yes.
Quantum Biology Collective. I love that. But we don't even have to know that. Like we literally,
No.
okay, think about it. Don't get a good night's sleep. Can you rationalize things? Can you think logically? Are you stressed? Are you calm? No, you're not calm. You are like lethargic, bad work day. I can't think worth a
Yeah.
darn if I don't have a good sleep and at the right time. If I have a long sleep during the day, doesn't count. It does not
Yeah. I
count.
agree.
It does not feel the
Yeah.
same. My husband's working nights this week and he doesn't usually do it. He said, okay, fine for his workplace. He said, okay, I'll do this for this week. And I am feeling so sorry for that man because he
Yeah.
spent a lot of time when we were in our younger years with young children going between nights and days and all this stuff. It literally will like destroy your health. Like if you are on night shifts or whatever, try to get off or something because that is
Absolutely.
not, it's not healthy. So I don't want to scare anybody. I'm just saying I totally second what you're saying. And we can see that just by what our experience is, how we feel, how our children feel. We can observe that and know that. And with sleep issues, first thing we do is get them their rhythm going again. Get to bed, kind of like 10 before 10. Some people get to bed earlier than that, but like I can't. But I mean, I'm not up late, but right, you do. Oh, I bow to you because I don't know how I love that. I was like, if I could, I would, because I get up at 5. So I'm like, I probably should go to bed a little earlier. But if you can get to bed a good time, you will naturally wake up. You won't need an alarm. I've used an alarm. The
No.
only time I use an alarm is
Mm-mm.
if I have to catch a flight at 5 in the morning or something, and I want to make sure that I'm
Sure.
up, right? Or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't need alarm, and you wake up feeling refreshed. Like, go figure, because all that biochemistry that you were so expertly explaining is regulating itself. It's like all regulated.
Everything.
Why? Because of the light, right? Because of
Yeah.
the light. Yeah, I love it.
That's it. That is the truth. Like I say, it sounds so simple, but I think because the sun comes up every day and goes down, and it's just like we know it, but we don't seem to pay attention because it's almost too close to our nose. But
Yeah.
ask anybody, you go up into Seattle or someplace in the winter when it gets gray, and what do they get? Fatigue and depression. And who?
Mhm.
Well, I was a beach bum, but I can't think of anything, especially in my youth, that I would bounce out to the beach and get the sun. You know what I mean? I was a happy kid. I was just, of
Yeah.
course, the beach added to it. Don't misunderstand me. But the sunshine, I don't know anybody that doesn't want to step into the sunshine as a general rule of how it just elevates you without knowing anything about what we're talking about. Other than in most cases, just feels good.
It does. And there's a reason why it feels good. We're just talking about all the reasons why, but we can all figure that out. Like, yeah, it feels good. And, yeah. So I love that you were a beach bum. I think everybody should be a beach bum. I raised my children as beach bums on the riverbank. Like, let's be beach bums for 6 hours a day. We would spend all that time out there just like being in the sand, on the earth, and in the sunlight.
I love
All
it.
right.
I
So,
love
and
it.
so, love it. Okay. So, couple of things I wanted to mention that I was plucking from your what you were saying here. That biophotons or light is really like, I wanted to kind of add that word communication. So it's like it's allowing communication between the cells and be in every. So
Yeah,
that's what light actually does, right? Is that correct?
that is absolutely correct. And at the speed of light, that's how
Mm-hmm.
you everything that's going on, the communicator, the key communicator is light. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, again, a lot of this stuff is, I wouldn't say it's new to me because I've been playing it with, it's because of John Ott for about 35 years. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it's the science I leave to the scientists. My part has been the love of light,
Yep.
just from the heart, as we've
Mm-hmm.
chatted about love and light and heart, and more on, to be quite frank, more on the, not the mechanic, on the manufacturing side. That's sort of where my background, when I met Art, we were making lights for him in those days, the Art light. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, as I say, the background. And there's geniuses out there that can really tell the story. But the point remains, again, excuse me, the importance is just beyond the measures. I would really just encourage everybody, take a peek. Here's a funny little side note. A lot of people these days, to try to stay healthy, they take vitamins,
Right.
vitamins and minerals, supplements. And sometimes, depending on the quality, you can pay a pretty darn good price and you can be sucking down a lot of those
Yep.
pills. If you do not have, Carla, if you do not have the full spectrum of the equivalent of sunlight entering the body through the retina, all of those vitamins, minerals, and supplements will not be metabolized properly because metabolism is dependent 100% on light. So again, you may be taking vitamins and pills and spending all time, and they may be of some benefit. But if you want the full benefit, you need to get that light because the light is what's cooking them up. And if you don't do that, I hate to say it, a lot of it goes down, forgive me, the toilet bowl.
Yeah, it
So
does.
it's really kind of critical from an economics, but from your health. Why not get, if you're going to spend that money, why not get your money's worth by making sure that it's metabolized and you're getting your, full value of those goodies that you're trying to assist your health. So that's kind of a funny little footnote. Light itself is a nutrient. And it catalyzes everything that you ingest. So it's like a double whammy. The light itself is a nutrient, and it's a catalyst that impacts and metabolizes everything you're ingesting. So I mean, it's almost too much to believe. I can easily see why the ancients all worshipped the sun.
Right.
I'm right there with them. I'm right there with them.
Yeah, there's a reason for all of that. When you see what the
Absolutely.
ancients did, and in all those ancient civilizations, it's like it all makes sense because they knew.
Yes,
They
so
knew.
much.
We're not so smart here nowadays with our fake this and fake that. Like they all knew. We should really all return to that wisdom of the ancient
agree.
civilizations and our natural rhythms. So you were talking
Yeah.
about a nutrient. And so that might be a really good segue into what I wanted to ask you next. And I think maybe we've sort of unpacked this a little bit already, but like what malnutrition is, because you talk about on your website, Science of Light, about malnutrition and John Ott's, definition of that. Can you just define that for us really quickly here?
Sure.
Or not
Sure.
quickly, take your
John, by the
time.
way, yeah, as you know, I'm sure you've heard it from me as well as I don't know anybody that's not into health, that is into health, excuse me, especially those that are into quantum, this new quantum biology. It's the
Yep.
new paradigm. We're moving away from, just the diet and nutrition, which I'm not knocking by any means, but there's a small group that's growing, Dr. Jack Cruz, Dr. Jacob Lieberman. There's a handful of real superstars out there that are leading the way and recognizing that everything breaks down on the quantum level again, back to light. So that said, John Ott was an incredible observer. He was actually a banker by trade, but his hobby was, photography. And more than just photography, he was a pioneer of time-lapse photography. So he did a lot of the early work for Walt Disney, the growing of the pumpkin for Cinderella. John Ott, it's just fascinating. Anybody that has ever read any of his books, or I should say, if you haven't read his books, there's several out there. One in particular I get it backwards, Light and Health, Health and Light, but there's 3 or 4 million copies sold. But anyways, John, along the way, coined the term mal-illumination, and he stated, mal-illumination is to light as malnutrition is to food. So just like you have an issue when you don't get the right nutrients, if you don't get the right wavelengths of light, 98% going into the retina, basically 2% for the skin, although the combination is really quite essential. The fact remains, he therefore coined that term, and it's very simple. Mal-illumination is to light as malnutrition is to food. It's almost so simple that I hope people won't miss it, but it's again critical. He also came to these conclusions. I'll digress a little bit if you don't mind to tell you sort of a funny story about John Ott. John was working for Walt Disney, and Walt Disney was doing a movie called Cinderella. Again, 60, 70 years ago, I lose track. And Disney wanted John to grow a pumpkin under time-lapse sequences for his movie. So John proceeded to do that, and he was doing it indoors. I think he was living in Chicago at the time, and he used to call it his ivory cellar, where he had all his equipment set up. So he started to film this pumpkin and from seed, and his time-lapse cameras, of course, he could film them 24 hours, seven days a week, and then he could speed it up if anybody doesn't know what time-lapse is. Anyways, he was going along and all was going well. And I guess pumpkins, again, you'll forgive my ignorance, but I think they have 2 different flowers, male and female flower. that is natural in the growth of the pumpkin. Well, John started to have a problem. He was either getting all male or all female, but only one, not both. So he came back to Disney and said, I'm having a problem with that pumpkin. He said, but I've got 2 years of time lapse of a tomato. Why don't we make her coach a tomato instead of a pumpkin? And Disney said, I want a pumpkin, John. So John said, I'll go back I'll try it again. So in the midst of starting the whole darn process again, one of the fluorescent tubes in his area went out. Didn't give him much thought, went to the hardware, picked up a tube, put the tube up, and started his project. The point is that as the project proceeded, whatever he was originally getting, let's just say it was male, now he was getting no male, he was only getting female. So John scratched his head, said, well, he's a good observer. He may be a banker, but he's a very good observer of nature. He said, what changed? The light tube. So that brought John to the awareness that light was what was causing the flower to grow in, the plant to not develop properly. Anyways, he ultimately went to a company the details probably don't matter, but it was called the Duro Test Company. The head man was a guy by the name of Luke Thorington, and John went to him, living in Chicago, and asked them to make a light that was more sun-like quality. And again, that was many years ago. The product was known as Vitalite. And the Vitalite was the first and only patented full spectrum light that started this modern day of full spectrum light, as John coined the term generically, meaning sunlight quality light. So Luke Thorington made him a product called Vitalite. He then made his whole work area with Vitalites, and lo and behold, both flowers came up, and he ultimately was able to deliver to Disney the pumpkin from seed to Cinderella. So that started John on his path to the awareness. So he then started to experiment with plants, and he saw that when he didn't have the full spectrum properly, the plants would either die or they'd have stunted growth. Then he moved on to, I'm not crazy about, what he experimenting with laboratory animals, but that's what they did next. And they found that laboratory mice, I believe, that were sensitive on some level, that under different lighting conditions versus natural outdoor sunlight, under the different lighting conditions, the mice lived half of a life, from only 8 months to natural light, 16 months. So the wrong lighting conditions, or unnatural, I should say, shortened the lifespan 50%. The lighting.
Wow.
And then he used different types of lighting, and he was able to, based on the better quality, he was able to extend the life of the creature or the plant. And when they had the worst light, it was causing cancerous growth. So it's just fascinating. And he went on from there, writing books and all kinds of research. If you look at John's Vitae on my website, it'll take you hours to get through it. That's how much this guy was just big brain.
Yeah.
But remarkable. Again, when I saw a video of his work, I said, wow, this guy's a genius, which brought me to him, met him, had a license agreement with ArtLight, became ArtLight, started making products for John Art. And to this day, 35 years later, I loved the light of the sun when I was a kid on the beach. But now the passion is use the word love. I love light. And not only that, I believe that light in its own way is love. So for me,
I agree.
It's an essential. It's an absolute essential.
I agree. On that quantum level and the energetic level and the emotional level, light is love. And that's not just a metaphor. I mean, I love metaphor, but I think metaphor is rooted in truth, actually. It's rooted in truth. Okay, so before we digress to that topic, I just want to actually, you were saying a couple of things that can happen when we have this like whole mal-illumination scenario. And so you were saying things like cancer. What else? Like we know, some of the things that we actually use light therapy for, but not some of these products aren't actually very good, but some are better than others. But they're like SAD, right? Like seasonal affective disorders. So things that are mood disorders and like depression, anxiety, things like that. What else would you add to that list of things that can actually go awry in the body or emotional state when you have mal-illumination?
Sure. They're now identifying, and again, not limited to, but they're now identifying that malillumination plays a huge part of obesity.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, there was research that demonstrated morning sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, no change in a person's lifestyle, no change of your diet, no change of exercise, just adding morning sunlight. People
Mm-hmm.
had less, would lose weight. So the fact of just adding light, there was no change, but a loss of weight. Diabetics, obesity, depression, not just seasonal, but clinical depression,
Mm-hmm.
fatigue, irritability. The research on our product even identified anger was reduced. But
Mm-hmm.
here's one, again, I'll digress into anecdotal. This one, I hope that this word gets out there. There was some research that was done, I forget, I almost want to say the Navy, but that was different. No, there was some research, putting aside who did it. And it was laboratory, I think it was rats, and they were indoors under, conventional lighting, and they were trying to understand addiction, alcohol
Mm-hmm.
addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they were doing, again, I don't know enough of the research, although we do have the research posted on our website. But
Yep.
here's what happened. The laboratory rats, if my memory is correct, they had a bowl of water and they had a bowl of some kind of alcoholic beverage and whatever food they were feeding them. Well, they were trying to track it, and I'm not sure, again, the research, what it was saying, but one weekend, by, unbeknownst to anybody, the power in the building, the electricity went off.
Mm-hmm.
So the light that was on a timer to go on and off to replicate night and day. So now that the rats were in total darkness for the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time that when this happened and they came in, they realized that the power was off. They looked and they saw the rats drank only the alcohol.
Oh.
So when the darkness set in, the laboratory rats under full darkness, night and day, turned to alcoholism.
Interesting.
Turned to alcohol. So they maybe were alcoholic rats.
Yeah.
When they turned the power back on, they got back into rhythm. They never went back to the alcohol. They just drank the water. How
Mm-hmm.
wild is that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the chemistry was altered that somehow instinctively the rat, I assume, attempted to alter whatever the experience they were having and turned to the alcohol. And I can only assume somehow the alcohol self-medicated like a human, and they
Right.
stayed with it. So the lights came back on, then no more alcohol. Can you
Wow.
imagine if you could just have the right light in your environment, if you're an Alcoholics Anonymous or somebody that's trying to get off of that addiction, even if I'm not claiming it's a cure, I'm simply
Mm-hmm.
saying anything that can help, wouldn't
Yep.
that be miraculous?
Yes. And free. Right? Like it's like you don't have
And
to pay for that. Right? Like all these things, we complicate things so much. And
yeah,
if we just get right back to the basics like this, like, it's free and it just
it's free.
flows. Right? It's
It's
just
free.
giving the body what it
It is.
needs.
It's all.
Okay. And a couple other things I want to mention too, because this is one of the things that we started talking about when you and I started having these conversations was that when you were trying to get these lights into schools, and that was a big
In
mission of
schools.
yours.
Oh,
And the reason for
hyperactivity.
that is that when you see poor lighting and like that kind of fluorescent, like actually it is like toxic lighting. It's not just like
Yes,
not the right light or you're not getting the nutrient, but you're actually getting something that is toxic and
you are correct.
environmentally toxic, right? So when you get that, then you have these effects that will like ADHD and learning disabilities, right? So add
You
those to
are
the
correct.
list that you'll see quite often in big groups of people who are in like poorly lit areas all day long.
Yeah. And you mentioned that again, if anybody would like to see, I've got some of John's clips, little, snippets of sorts of his video, on video at our
Yep.
website. And one in particular was kids in the classroom with hidden cameras.
Yeah.
And I believe it was in Sarasota, Florida, maybe in the 70s, I'm guessing. But anyways, they had hidden cameras with the permission, of course. The teachers knew and the school department set it up. And John set this all up. If you see our video, and it's time lapse, so it's speeded up, it focuses on one child in particular, although it shows different things. But there's one child is sitting in the back, and you can see, of course, the time lapse is speeding it up to start with. But even in the time lapse, you can see this poor little guy, I think first grade maybe, just bouncing off the walls, huge learning disability, just a basket case. When they changed the lighting, within 30 days, this youngster learned how to read for the first time at school. Within 30 days, he steps up to the blackboard where he had never gone before and started to demonstrate and participate, and his learning disability completely went away. 30 days of changed lighting. And then on the same video clip, the next clip was for the poultry industry. And as I say, it's on the website. If you want to see it in living color, I think it'll blow minds.
Yep.
But the poultry industry, they set up a test, and the conventional lighting of what was in the industry and the full spectrum. Under the conventional lighting, the chickens would actually peck each other to death in some cases, and they had to debeak them. And a host of other issues. When they changed to the full spectrum, they did not debeak. They did not attack each other. Their eggs had 50% more calcium, less breakage in the shell of the egg.
Wow.
And the lifespan of the chicken, again, you'll forgive me, I forget the detail, but was extended. So they didn't have to be debeaked. They didn't, aggressive toward each other.
Yep.
At the same time, and the legs were higher. I'm trying to remember, again, you'll forgive me, my memory of the issue. I haven't looked in a long time. Whatever the case, the eggs were better eggs all the way around.
Yep.
And a huge savings for the chickens, and a huge savings. I think that they laid like twice as many eggs. It was not like just a little, huge change, just change in the light. And the last one was the one I mentioned about the laboratory mice under different lighting conditions. The worst was pink fluorescent. The laboratory mice lived, I believe, approximately 8 months. And under different conditions, moving fuller spectrum and comparing it to natural outdoor sunlight. The natural outdoor sunlight, they lived an average of 16 months. So the wrong lighting, in some cases, cut the lifespan of a mouse in half. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that a mouse and a human are going to be identical in those, in that research, but it sure makes me say, I don't want to be under the light that the mouse that lived 8 months, I'll change my light. And then to take it one step further, John brought to the attention of, as you can imagine, the lighting industry. John identified, because he's a time-lapse photographer, he could let his cameras roll. He did something 2 years of filming nonstop to get 10 minutes of view. So you can imagine what a guy he was, just a genius. But John demonstrated, the US Navy did research, again, back in, I think, the 70s. They had sailors on board ship, on ship. So you're out, the reflections of sunlight on the water.
Yeah.
It's a pretty strong environment for sun. Versus sailors that were administrative indoor office workers. And they were testing for skin cancer. The indoor office workers under fluorescent lighting, it was like 4-to-1 for skin cancer. Indoor office workers versus sailors on the high seas.
Wow.
So John then started to do research on the fluorescent tubes. And a fluorescent tube is like an old computer screen. It's a cathode ray tube. It has a cathode that sort of shoots a beam to the other end, and that causes the gases to get excited, and the gases cause the phosphors to glow and make light. So John tried different meters, and the industry, oh no, the fluorescents are safe. Well, John took his cameras, and the camera didn't lie. He set his cameras up to watch plants in front of the cathodes. And I want to say laboratory mice, but the plants is what I remember most. The point is, he let his cameras roll for whatever the window of time, weeks. And he was able to demonstrate that the cathodes of all fluorescents, these little screwy fluorescents, the long tubes, they're all giving out low-level X-rays that are, guess what? Cancerous. So fluorescent lights are technically cancerous. John brought this information to the industry. They didn't want to hear about it. They kept selling their lights, and they said, oh, this guy's crazy. He demonstrated, he showed that the camera, they wouldn't buy it. And to this day, they still sell fluorescent lights. And that's why the sailors working indoors under fluorescence, the X-ray radiation, low-level X-ray, over the long haul, weeks into months, was
Mm-hmm.
causing skin cancer
Mm-hmm.
indoors. And the sunlight, ironically, too much, yes, it can cause cancer. But if you don't get the right amount of sunlight, sunlight actually can reverse certain cancers. So
Right.
again, we know that we know that too much of anything is often a little bit of a problem. That's a given with everything in life. But
Yep.
the fact still remains, what I jokingly call safe sun is essential. And you don't go on vacation, coming from Canada and lay out in Miami and want a tan overnight. It's little by little you build up safe sun, and again your skin will naturally adjust and give you that tan to keep you safe in the sun. So it's so what you've already said many times, common sense, so
Mm.
simple, so
Mm-hmm.
natural, but big business, and I think money, unfortunately,
Yep.
greed, whatever we
Yep.
want to call it,
Yep.
they were warned, they were told, and all they did was buried the information
Mm-hmm.
and kept selling their light tubes. So the
Yep.
fluorescent is not even just the poor quality of light that can affect, but there's radiation, there's, as I say,
Yep.
low level X-ray radiation and radio frequency waves. It's just the technology really needs to be taken with a grain of salt because the modern world of technological genius, well, it's wild, but unfortunately, some of these things, there's a side effect that they don't want to talk about or they
Yep.
don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the case, we're like human guinea pigs, paying the price.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I totally agree. And so, okay, so let's talk about what we can do to improve the quality of life and increase exposure to quality light. So we increase that, right? So, but like, of course,
Sure.
the one thing is to get out in the sun, but what else can we
That's
do?
number one.
Yeah, number one.
Sure. Number one, just to reiterate, number one is without a question, get out in the sun.
Yep.
And especially again, yeah, I realize people work, most cases, or at least the majority of us. So you're not going to be hanging out at the beach all day, although you may love to do that.
Can work outside.
They say 15 to 30 minutes. The industry seems to think the consensus 20 to 30 minutes. If you can just get the luxury of
Mm.
15, 20, 30 minutes of morning sunlight shortly after wake up. I don't mean you got to get out there when the sun rises, although that would be the ideal.
Yep.
But the point is, and you don't have to look and stare at the sun. And if it's too warm, you can even be under a shady tree because the light is still entering the body through the eye, shady. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to be out there, preferably no contacts, take off your glasses, no sunglasses, just to
Mm-hmm.
absorb that morning sun. It's free if it's available. And that would be, job number one, morning sunlight. If you can get sun breaks during the day and step away from your computer every half an hour, even
Mm-hmm.
if you can't get up, at least go to the window. But to give
Yes.
yourself a break, get out of the chair, let your blood flow a little bit. John identified the problem of what happens when you're at the computer. Again, that's, I guess, a side note. I'll mention that in a moment. But the point is, number one, get out in the morning sun. Take
Mm-hmm.
sun breaks if you can. At the very least, go near a window. Position your desk near a window if possible. So that would be the first thing. Of course, the second thing is if you're indoors and can't get the sun or it's not available or whatever the reason may be, John's concept 40 years ago, of 35, 40 years ago, of artificial light called full spectrum light, basically more sun-like quality that
Mm-hmm.
went way back to that vital light that I had mentioned. There are many products out there currently claiming to be full spectrum. However, there's a downside.
Mm-hmm.
The full spectrum lights, whether they be fluorescent or they be the newer LEDs, in the lighting business or the lighting industry, which I'm really not in, I'm in the world of health, but I'm
Right.
involved with light.
Yep.
From a physical perspective, lumens and the amount of light coming out is what a physicist and a lighting manufacturer, they're concerned about how many watts and how many lumens of light are coming out. So they're not interested in the invisible components of light. John Ott was very, very well known for the essential need of ultraviolet that so many people have been turned off, fearful.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, your eyes have UV photoreceptors.
I
Whoever
know.
invented you, being a bit, they put photoreceptors purposefully to collect UV. Your skin absorbs UVB and makes vitamin D. It's critical there's too many research studies that tell you about vitamin D. So
Mm-hmm.
the downside is that fluorescence They do have a little trace of UV. You may not really be getting the benefit, but the point is, John was pro UV. He demonstrated that the cells in the eye do not function properly if you don't have the UV. Take away with the UV, was causing eye problems. Add the natural dosage of UV, sight improved.
Right.
The other, that's where John was. He was full spectrum visible light, and he included what we call added UV. That was what I was making a product based on his patents 35 years ago.
Yep.
What we have done, when I say we, myself and my brother, we started a little nonprofit, as you've already mentioned, Signs of Light, literally 10 years ago, 2012. And we were out there just promoting our message because of the internet. And as much as I'm a goofball with technology, it was easy to get somebody to put up a website and type my brains out and tell you why you needed light, and pressing John's message of mal-illumination.
Yeah.
When LED technology started to come out and the prices started to get down, like I say, I'm really not a lighting engineer and not really involved in the lighting world, but it got my attention because with LEDs, you can zone in on specific wavelengths. You can really fine tune the quality of light much better than fluorescent. So we started to look into LEDs, and we got involved with some engineers. And while we were doing it, we didn't know it 10 years ago, but slowly but surely we started to learn about a lot of research about specifically near infrared light, known as near, NIR, near infrared light. It's just the invisible part of the spectrum just outside of the visible red. Well, now the research on near infrared, the last I looked, it was over 4,000 peer-reviewed papers that are claiming such essential need, from ATP on a cellular level, melatonin. Melatonin is produced, believe it or not only in the pineal, but melatonin is produced in the mitochondria because of near infrared light. So again, you'll see that at the website, and a lot of the details that I'm sort of either forgetting or brushing over, there's a lot of good information that folks may be able to get into the minutiae and the detail. But so we decided, wow, we want to take John's full spectrum, which we did. We want to take a little trace of UV. So we were right there with John. And now we added near infrared, 5 different wavelengths to give it what we call a broad base. So we really have currently what we believe is the fullest spectrum. The visible that we have, we made a deal with a company in Korea. We believe currently we have the #1 fullest visible spectrum, second to none, at least currently, of the world of full spectrum technology in LEDs. We took that and matched it up with 5 different wavelengths of the near. We put it all together into one little light box, which we sent you one, you got it.
Yep.
And we call it SOL for Science of Light, Photovites. I think you're reaching for a lot. I get that feeling. Thank you, Carla.
There it is. It literally lives beside me. That's where it lives. Right here.
I love it.
Yep.
And what you do is, that light is really, again, sunlight's the best. We want to make that very clear. But as far as what's out there currently, the fact is, I like to believe we've got the best, at least at the moment. I would encourage anybody, compare us with anybody you want. However, the irony is, like I say, conventional LEDs or conventional full spectrum, even these light boxes for depression, if they don't have the near, what you have is a Trojan horse. You're getting the value of the light maybe for your depression or whatever you're using it, but while you're getting it, the lack of near means that the light is out of balance, and the blue side of the spectrum over the time will basically lead, for most people, with macular degeneration. That is to say that the light is true conventional fluorescent, conventional LEDs that don't have the rich red and the near. Like I say, I don't mean that you do it once. I'm talking about over multiple years of use. They are unquestionably contributing to eye issues, macular degeneration. At our website, the research is there. I didn't make this stuff up. This is the research of others that say light that does not have the near is a Trojan horse that may be giving you good so-called full spectrum, but missing the near, you're going to be causing eye problems and probably a heck of a lot more. But as I say, the research is at our site. It's pretty evident. So we then made this very special light that actually, the patent that we pulled is for the application and the apparatus to improve your eyes.
Right.
So our light, technically, while using it, actually improves. Again, I don't want to say that that you shouldn't be going to your eye doctor for whatever you need. But for
Okay.
all intent and purpose, our light is not a Trojan horse. It's giving you all of the equivalent of the photovites or photovitamins, just like the vitamins that you take in. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also catalyzing those vitamins that you take in. So we made this special light that, as you know, that's now in the marketplace. We sell it with I think it's a 60-day money back guarantee. We've gotten 0 returns so far, although it's a new product. So I guess that, I need to qualify that. But the fact is that the light also affords you to use it in the morning for what we now call light hygiene.
Yes.
15 minutes of white followed by 15 minutes in a half an hour. If you didn't get in the sun, you're off and going. And we set up so it's ideal at your breakfast table. You're eating or you're reading your news and you're getting your light hygiene and you're set for the day. But you can shut off the white that has near constantly and go to only the near. And if you put it near your computer, it will counter the blue light from the computer. A lot of people are wearing blue blockers. I'm not so sure that they should be worn in the daytime. They should be worn at night to block the blue. But in the daytime, look at the sky. It's usually blue. Blue is essential to give you alertness. So I would question, without really doing the research, if blue blockers are ideal. However, if you can balance the blue that's coming at you with the near infrared that's coming from your side, you're now, common sense, you're sort of balancing the blue and the red like nature, and it will reduce the issues. And any computer user, I like to believe, they will feel the difference, especially if they're sensitive. So our light is kind of unique. It has multiple uses, mostly to get that circadian rhythm, mostly to give you that voltage that get you started, to shut off, melatonin, turn on serotonin. And at the same time, anybody that's at the computer, essential. And now I'll come back, with your permission, to John Ott and computers. About 35 years ago, John was doing research on the whole new idea of computers, and people complaining of neck, people complaining of carpal tunnel, people complaining of eyes. So John decided to get his old time-lapse cameras rolling again. And John was working with something that was new in those days called black field microscope. And basically, it was a dark field that allowed him to see things that no man had ever seen. He hooked up his time-lapse cameras with real living blood cells, and he was filming it. He took the slide and put it near a computer monitor, and he observed that regular normal blood cells that weren't near the computer, they were in a condition where the red cells were floating around, not touching each other, not clumping together, not getting stuck. When he put it in front of the computer screen, within minutes, the red blood cells were sticking together, usually associated with a high-fat diet, but they weren't from high fat. John deduced that the iron in our red blood cells was getting magnetized. So if your red blood cells start to stick together, there's a medical term called rouleau. And those red blood cells, when they stick together, they don't flow because a red cell has to fold in half to go through the capillary. So if they're all stuck together, guess what? You're not getting oxygen. So you get strains in the neck, strains in the eyes, and probably strains
Headaches,
anywhere
fog,
else.
brain fog, don't think well.
Right. And so when computer vision became a big thing, again, John tried to bring the message just like he did to the fluorescent manufacturers. He brought to the computer big guys. They didn't want to even know. They didn't, because if they listened to him, the tubes, cathode ray tube, computer, cathode ray tube, it would have been an indictment for being a hazardous product. So they just nixed John. They wrote all kinds of nasty things, basically insinuated the guy was crazy. But little by little, folks like you and me that were saying, hey, this guy
Makes
sounds
sense.
right. And so little by little, a following started. And today, like I say, John Ott's got several million books, long since gone, rest his soul. But I mean, the guy was an absolute genius. And those that intuitively felt the love, if they didn't believe him, all they had to do was look at his camera work. Again, on our website, you'll see a couple, 4, 5, 6 different little snippets. I like to believe they'll blow your mind. John did research. They hired him for the new industry of television in the 40s to do time-lapse work. And John identified that televisions, especially color televisions, were putting off such dangerous radiation. They took all of his research and they shelved it. So
Uh,
again, in the days of television, he demonstrated that televisions, the earlier, I don't know about today, but the
mhm.
earlier TVs, especially color TV, when I was a kid, color TV was wow,
Wow.
color.
Yeah.
But he demonstrated that they were absolutely cancerous. They didn't want to hear that, as you can
Uh-huh.
imagine. So
Uh-huh.
his research was so far reaching. Televisions, computers, school children, chickens,
Mhm. Mhm.
John could control. Oh, this is another funny one. You forgive me, my wonderful memory. What is it? Chinchillas.
Yep.
Chinchilla growers came to John. They found out that John could control the sex of a chinchilla or other creatures
Mhm.
with a light. And in the
Mhm.
industry, they wanted more females to breed, and they were getting mostly male. So John
Mhm.
set them up with full spectrum light, and guess what? All of a sudden, they were getting much more females, and that became a standard, I think, in the raising of chinchillas. Again, sort of sad what they do after the fact, but they were looking
Yes.
to increase breeding, and lo and behold, John demonstrated that changing the light, he was creating a more
Mm.
natural environment, and the chinchillas, whatever they were trying to accomplish, they got what they wanted. So, like I
Wow.
said, just
I
mind-blowing creatures and
uh,
humans responding light.
I'll give an example for our response. So, like I said, this guy lives beside my computer. Like it's right here. And my daughter and I used it lots. Like you were saying something about earlier that in Saskatchewan, or in Canada or whatever, it's not like you're going to go down to, like bake in the sun somewhere like to get sun. But we get a lot of sun. Like we're very
Yeah,
sunny in because I'm in the prairies. Like the coast is going to be a little different, but we get like a lot of hot sun and all that stuff. But the winter, the days are super
yeah,
short and it's dark by
yeah,
5. So, I mean, circadian
yeah,
rhythm, yeah, if you went by like, candlelight or firelight after 5, okay. But I'm not going to bed at 5. So we do have to rely on some form of artificial light in our day. And so, so then we're looking at things more like amber light in the night, right? And then
yeah.
something
Or
like
red,
or red, yes, at night, right? So in replacing those light bulbs.
right?
And then also during the day, so when in the morning, because it's not light until like 9, and I'm up at
Yeah,
whatever time of day, like this is like it's too long of darkness. And so we were using your light. And so my like, for my daughter, like, how is this affecting your mood? And also for me, I actually had a benefit that I didn't expect, which was I had a lot more energy. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
cool. That was like a perk that I actually didn't really, I was actually wanting to do like therapy for my eyes. I'm like, I want to get rid of these glasses someday because I don't like to be reliant on them. And when I take them off, I'm kind of
yeah,
disoriented because everything's fuzzy,
yeah,
and I want to
yeah.
improve that. And I know that computer work is not great, but I have to be on here for my
True,
work,
true,
right? So I'm like, hey, I want to do something that's going to counteract some of these things that I can't really control unless I completely change my life and my vocation. So we use this a lot in the winter, and I want to get back to using it now, even though it's summer,
yeah,
because of the effects on light, the eyes. And I go outside, but I still love that idea of counteracting as I'm having to use
true,
this tool. So that's it. I
true.
just wanted to say that. But so what I want to move into is a little bit more. So like we'll end with talking about some other things we can expect to happen when we illuminate our lives more with healthy light. So again, like I said, better energy,
Yeah.
like those feelings of depression or sadness or whatever weighs on you when it's like dark all the time, those things start to lift. What other things have you seen, Ken? We were talking about like maybe even is cancer actually affected, or it's like, caused by malillumination, or I think you did say something about an improvement, with light, etc. So what else do you have to say
Yeah.
about that?
Well, the first thing is you've already said it. As a matter, when we were with John Ott years ago, one of our lights, we used to call it the energy light.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, there's just no doubt that the first thing you're getting voltage. You're
Yeah.
basically, again, the bulk, 98% coming in through the retina. You don't have to sit there and stare at it. You want just a light to shower you, almost like if you're out in the sun's coming down and showering you. So first and foremost, it's giving you energy. It's regulating your circadian rhythm, essential. We've already more than touched on circadian rhythm. In addition to that, research demonstrating morning sunlight causes you to lose weight, to manage weight loss, Nothing but the sun. We touched on to that. There are so many other biological benefits. You forgive me that I really, again, I'm still more in the making the light than I am the scientist.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could trouble people to look at the website, they'll be overwhelmed with some of the benefits and some of the research. You name any disease, and then Google that disease with the word light. And
Yep.
I'm just about willing to bet you $1 to a donut, you'll see research and say, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the fact remains the potential to reduce the risk of disease. Why wait to be sick? If you're getting the proper light and you're regulating your rhythm and you're charging your battery, you're reducing the risk of all kinds of diseases.
Everything.
Like I say, why wait to address sickness? Prevention is the cure. That's the way to go in my mind, is to reduce that. So like I say, in a nutshell, it may not touch on to the detail, but the bottom line is that energy, that rhythm, and the reduction of disease, no matter what it may be. And may I say too, different color lights, they're now checking specifics. Right. We mentioned the red, now green light, they're identifying for migraine headaches. There's just so much about different wavelengths and different benefits. Again, a little outside of my realm at the moment, because I'm sort of narrow on John Ott and the need for sunlight, full spectrum light.
Yeah.
But the potential and a lot of that information, if you go to our blog, it's endless. Immunity, they found that white T cells in sunlight move faster, guaranteed that there's a real link with those white T cells and immunity, no ifs, ands, or buts. So, I mean, when we speak about immunity, a lot of people say, oh, this will help your immune. We've got research. We didn't do the research, but the research is there that on the cellular level, all the way down, that your fat cells absorb that light, and there's a response in the white T cells that reduce your risk of disease or improve your immunity. So, I mean, it really is. I see it as number one, but I like to at least qualify it. There's nothing more important.
I
so
like
I'm kind
that.
of safe, so I don't get fighting with the guys that are making oxygen or this nutrient.
Food's more important.
Again,
no, it's water.
Right. and if you think of it, no sun, no life. And the
of
earth
anything.
revolves around the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the earth revolves. It's the center of our universe. We live in a solar system. See, doesn't that say something? We live in a solar system. As we've already touched, even in closing, Ra, the sun god. There's so many different philosophies, religions, and countries. They all have a god in reference to the sun. So I say again, if they all did, there's really must be something to it. Just common sense. Intuitively, my friends, I don't really know anybody that says they step in the sun and go, oh, I hate the sun. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say I hate the sun, unless you've got a condition or you're taking something that is light sensitive. Well, then again, that goes back to your doctor. We're not doctors. We make no claims. As a matter of fact, we try to keep our suggestion way down and talk. We only talk about mal-illumination. We're saying that if you're indoors, you're getting bombarded with artificial light, artificial radiation, non-native, excuse me. And basically, so the lack of natural light and stepping indoors to too much artificial light, that's technically what John Ott called mal-illumination. Windows and windshields, sunglasses, all of these things are filtering the light that is essential for your biological combustion, for your biological well-being, mental health, physical health, and just plain old feel good.
Feel good. The light makes you feel good. Thanks so much, Ken. That was amazing. Amazing. It's like riveting information. And again, like it's I mean, for the most part it's free, and if we can't get it, we have tools like you have painstakingly created for us. So I so appreciate your work, and I'm really grateful to have had you here to discuss this with me right now during this series. And if anybody wants to find out more about Ken, his work, all the body of information they've gathered, as well as the lights he's been talking about and that I have beside me here, look in the show notes right under this video, and you can connect with Ken and find out everything that you need to know about illuminating your lives, to end on a really cheesy metaphor, because I love cheesy metaphors. So thanks again, Ken, for being here.
My pleasure, Carla. Thanks so very much for having me on.